Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Relationships are kind of the baseline for all of us. We are social creatures. We crave that interaction, and sometimes it can be challenging when you're in a relationship, be it a marriage or a partnership, whatever it might be, with somebody, and challenges come up. How do you solve those problems? What's the best way to do it? He helps couples all the time work through those situations, and he is back with us. He's an amazing psychologist. Dr. Roger Lavine is on the program. Welcome back, Roger. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Steve?
I'm good. You look refreshed and rested coming back from vacation. I take it was relaxing.
Absolutely.
And this is a big deal, what we're talking about today, because if you can't, and I'm always cautious about using the word problem, but if you can't solve a problem in a relationship, it just gets swept under the rug or just continues to manifest till it just gets bigger and bigger. When do we start talking about this? What are your thoughts?
Well, I find that a lot of couples come to couples therapy thinking they have a communication problem. Well, and then I'll start talking to them and they completely understand each other's position. So they communicated rather well. They just hadn't been able to come up with a way to meet both parties' needs.
I like that you said that, because the communication thing is what we would assume. Why are we at a standstill? Why is there an issue? Because either one person is not communicating properly with the other person. So do you find that most couples do have communication problems?
The big issue I find most often is that people like to jump to a solution. They want action, right? If I have a need and I'm upset about it, I want to take care of it right now, right? I want a solution in the moment. I want you to agree with me and we'll just do it my way, right? Because I have a strong drive behind my need, and that's not conducive to the process of actually coming up with a solution for everyone's needs.
Do you think that that has changed over the years, since we're in what I call an Amazon fast food society where we want it now? So like you're saying, we want the problem solved now.
I think it's changed more in the sense that previous generations were trained to tolerate discomfort and to be able to sit with unpleasantness better than newer generations. And I include the baby boomers, right? I mean, we tend to not want to sit in any kind of uncertainty and any kind of anger or any kind of negative feeling.
What do you feel that you're dealing with the most now in terms of conflict between couples?
The biggest thing is, with everybody being overstressed, both sides are looking to the other person for help, and both sides are short. So they're placing demands on each other when they're already feeling overwhelmed and then feeling like they're not supported.
And these conflicts could be anything, right? I know this is confidential. You're not giving any names, but how about some recent conflicts that you've worked with couples on? I'm sure that they could run the gamut from infidelity to just even kind of, I don't want to call it crazy, but things that we would never think that would be a conflict.
Well, I think a good example might be in an area around finances, right? When you have couples that can't resolve meeting each other's needs, what happens is one or the other parties might become, shall we say, secretive or sneaky, right? So if the couple can't work their way through the tension of having a difference on, say, how to manage the finances, then one party will pull an end run. And then once you start dishonesty, it's a very slippery slope.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. There you go. And now you have two problems. You have solving the financial situation that works for each person and or the couple, and then that segs into the trust issue. Wow.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And I think the majority of people that come and see me who have couples issues, uh, I think couples and problem solving is different than any other kind of situation that we get into. At work, we talk about compromising with other people, or we try to find the best worst case solution type of problem solving. And the problem with being in a relationship is that the goal of the problem solving is much different than in every other area in our life. In problem solving, when you're in a relationship, is you have to find a solution that meets both parties' needs. Because if you don't come up with a solution that meet both parties, you come up with some kind of compromise that gets you by, it comes with a resentment.
Yeah. And once the resentment sets in, it's almost like the seed has been planted into future challenges, because then I believe resentment leads to lack of respect, leads to something else, something else, something else.
Well, the big something else is no sex.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure that's probably one of the top three or top five things that probably come up in sessions with couples.
Exactly. And the base of the lack of intimacy comes back to an underlying buildup of resentment, because the the process that the couples use to solve their issues is it develops into a pattern that one party or the other is left with subtle resentments. Back to the we want instant answers. Most couples, there's one person that gets to the answer very fast and another one that's a little slower. So what happens over time is the one who decides uh, makes most of the decisions, and the other person goes along with it because it's easy.
But they're not fully satisfied with the result or answer.
No, they'll let you decide where we're going on vacation, but never quite get what they want, right?
Hmm. Which is a challenge in itself, because as you say that, the one person that made the suggestion, the other one said, "Yeah, we'll just go there." So the person that made the suggestion thinks, "Wow, they're thinking like me. This is great," and they're happy. I made it easy. I made the idea, and they're on board with it. But deep down inside, the other part of the couple is probably saying to themselves, "I don't want to do that. If that's not really what I want to do, I don't feel I'm being heard or whatever it might be." And then you have the seed of resentment being planted.
Exactly. So back to you got to be able to sit in the discomfort, the amount of time it takes to be able to get everything out on the table. So you got one person sitting at the computer ready to book the tickets, feeling like I gotta get the tickets booked before the prices go up, right? Just say yes. And the other party's like, yeah, I never win these arguments anyway. They're both a little uncomfortable, but they're trying to drive forward with a solution where you have to sometimes just say, well, whether the tickets are going to cost more or not, let's spend a little more time. What do you need out of this vacation? And then the next challenge comes in is most people have difficulty really understanding what their real needs are without some discussion. So hopefully our partner can help us find what it is we really want, which usually takes a number of questions and not declarative statements.
Do you feel, Roger, that many of us don't truly know what we want?
I think most of us have not taken the time to understand our intuition. Intuition is knowledge without words. So it takes a little effort to put those feelings into words. And that's where if you don't have space in your process, that never happens. And in the absence of being able to express what you need, you're not going to get it. So the biggest thing I find with couples is teaching them how to slow down that process, get on the same page, take enough time, and ask enough questions that each one can articulate the other's needs. Right? How do you know you're heard? Well, the other person can tell you what you said.
Hmm. What you just said, I'm a firm believer in that we all have the answer inside of us. It's the intuition, but quieting the noise around or distractions or whatever it might be to listen to what we need is probably, in my opinion, the biggest challenge to really hear what is inside of you. And that could be, your wants, needs, decisions, whether you should take a job or not. Instant feedback. You can reach us, by the way, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. Becky checks in from Buffalo, New York. She says, I'm getting married and debating with my fiance about finances. Is it a good idea for couples to have separate checking accounts?
I think that gets back to a value question, right? And this also back to the earlier point of what need does the checking account or a separate checking account do for you, right? Why? There's nothing wrong with having a combined one or a separate one. You just got to understand what's the underlying need and come up with what's the need of the other party. If for example, a person wants to have separate accounts because they have a need to control their finances and they have a certain routine and a way they control their finances. But the other party, why do they want a combined one? It may be because they feel like having a combined one says something about how much trust they have in each other. So then what you do is you say, okay, what solution would give me the ability to manage my own accounts and solve your problem of needing to feel like we're trusting each other, right? And you got to explore your options long enough until you find something that works.
I've had this conversation with some over the years about the separate checking accounts. Now that I'm thinking about it, and I have friends. They've been married about 15 years, and they have completely separate accounts, completely separate. Then others will say, "Well, no, wait a minute, it's not a partnership unless you pool the money together." So I guess I'm not saying one is right or the other. I guess if you've been divorced, you probably would say the separate is a good idea.
Well, I think that's exactly the issues. You got to sit down and understand what's the underlying need. In other words, you can't say my need is to have a separate checking account. There's an underlying need, right? And the underlying need might be security. If I've been divorced before, right? I need the security. Well, would a separate checking account really get your need met? Probably not.
Right. Yeah, you're
And
not.
then you can have a real discussion about what is it that's going to make you feel secure in this relationship? Because you're just using the checking account as a proxy.
Interesting. So you think there's deeper issues for somebody, maybe even in Becky's situation. There's deeper issues why they would gravitate toward separate accounts.
I think there's always a reason why you'd want a separate account, and it could be as simple as it's easier to manage.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be a deep issue around trust issues, right? But in itself, that you're discussing or arguing not the real issue.
Right. And
so you're never going to find a solution.
I would assume that's where you come into play.
I just teach them how to get to it. Like in this case, whichever position this Becky is taking, right? first she needs to ask herself, what needs does having a separate or combined account do for me, and understand where she's coming from, right? She's got to ask herself the questions, and then asking those same questions, why do you need the opposite, say a combined account, and listen. And then I think most cases people find that whatever it is they're arguing about, they can't resolve because there's something deeper or some real deeper need behind each of their positions that they need to address some other way.
And it could go pretty deep here. I mean, we in this situation, and I'm not saying it's Becky's dealing with this, but like we're saying, there could be trust issues from past relationships or just in general. You've had issues over over the years with trust, or even a control issue where you want to have better control over the money that you've earned. Yeah, I think that's a powerful point we make here when it comes to having somebody work with a couple. You see it from different angles where you may only see it from one angle initially, right?
Correct. And I think what I do in my therapy is we take this one issue, the checking account, and teach them the process of how do you both get on the same page? How do you learn how to express your needs, right? Because maybe the whole thing for the one with the separate account is her real issue is they're fiercely independent.
Okay.
And they really don't know. They've never really worked on expressing their needs or feel other people will meet their needs, right? So they got to get under, why do I really want that, that separate account? And maybe just I have an inability to do certain things. I got to learn some new skills because now I'm going to get into a new type of relationship that I haven't been before. Particularly where this couple is thinking about getting married, that means that they got to work through a whole bunch of this stuff.
What is your suggestion starting point when a couple has call it a conflict? There, there's an issue before they get to you. Where do they begin to solve or at least try to solve the conflict?
They need to start by both understanding what their needs are and making sure the other parties understood them. Because before you jump into a solution, the problem is always, I need a separate checking account, instead of saying, well, I need a solution where I can pay my bills easy, where I can feel comfortable, I'm in control of my money, whatever. And the other party says, I need a solution that makes me feel secure, that we're in this together, blah, blah, blah. And if you get the needs on the table, then you can talk about different options, but instead of fighting about a solution you've already come to by yourself.
Got it. Okay. But I've learned something here that most couples think it's a communication issue, but it may not be. It may not be.
Well, what I'll find in that same circumstance, um, the person, say, who wants the individual will know the other party has some kind of trust or insecurity going on, right?
Hmm.
And they'll say, he doesn't trust me. Well, it's not that personal, it's just he's not comfortable with, having this combined account. There's a lot more issues. Maybe we'll be comfortable with it after some other problems are solved. So they intuitively know something's going on with the other party, and they think it's a communication issue because this other party is, saying some other rationale. But this is where getting to understand and express your needs is important.
Uh, it's not easy because it's one thing when you have conflict at work or a disagreement or you're trying to work through something. When it's a personal relationship, now emotions come into play, and that's a whole different situation, right?
Right. And it also it builds up, maybe the checkbook issue 20 years later is a retirement account issue, right? It's no longer one one account with a couple $1,000 in it. It's a retirement account with hundreds of thousands in it.
Yeah. Yeah. The more money, more problems.
Well, I'm just saying that, what you let go in the beginning, right? After 20 years may not be so easy to let go. Maybe you you don't express a strong preference for where you go eat, but maybe 10 years later you're tired of eating Chinese or something. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, there's bigger at stake here.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, over time these things take on a heft, a gravitas, which on the surface doesn't seem to be that big a deal.
do you feel that all couples should have counseling before they get married?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Now, looking back over relationships, me personally, I think so. Because things could get uncovered. It could be even situations from your past. This is assuming that the couples will be honest in the beginning. Um, but you could have things that you personally don't even realize that you're carrying with you, let's say from your parents or whatever it might be.
There's that, and even simpler things like I ask new couples, I ask each one of them, are you a batcher or a pick up as you go person? Because say one is a pick up as you go, and the other one batches, leaves sink piles in the sink. I assure you very shortly that'll become a big issue.
I got you there. And again, what's interesting here is it's these what could be the little things now turn into the bigger things because then is resentment again. They're not hearing me. I told them I don't like the things left in the sink, and now they're leaving them there. Well, that part of the partnership, they may have been doing that since they were kids. That's what they do. This is the way it is. They're not doing it intentionally, uh, but it would be taken the other way by the other person in the relationship that they don't care. I'm not being heard. I don't want that stuff in the sink.
Exactly. And there's just a ton of things that we don't give much thought to when we're in the throes of passion and affection and living in two separate households, that when
Yeah.
all of a sudden you get married and become much more relevant.
They do say you learn a lot from somebody if you go on vacation with them. Whether it's a intimate relationship or even just friends, like you spend a week with somebody, you learn a lot. I'm a believer in that.
So we've established you should at least go on a vacation for a week with someone if you're not going to go to counseling before you get married.
Fair enough. Vacation's a lot cheaper than divorce, I would think, moving down the road.
Yes,
um
exactly.
how does it work when couples meet with you? Is it done individually at some point, then together? How does it work?
Well, they're there to work something out as a couple. So start out getting introduced to the problem and the people together.
Mhm.
Then I take a small period of time with each person, see if there's stuff they don't want to disclose. Maybe there's some physical abuse or mental abuse that they're not uncomfortable saying or whatever. And then we get back together and come up with our goals for the session. And then in the individual sessions, when people are really dug into their position, I may take them aside, each couple aside, and say, okay, what's the best way to express this? What's the best way to handle yourself during the discussion, right? Because sometimes even if we're right, the way we handle it, we become wrong. So
Hmm.
sometimes people need help in terms of how to say things and how to express their needs and to come to grips with what they really are willing to change and not willing to change. It's one of the big frustrations can come in when a party says, "Yeah, I'm willing to change that," but pretty deep down they're not.
Well, as soon as you include the word "but," What's the best way to reach you, Roger? And if it's a couple that's looking for counseling or direction, is it essentially one person of the couple reaches out and then starts that process?
Either party can reach out, and then we'll work with them to set up a time for the couple.
Got it. And then would it start with the couple, and then would it branch
Yes.
off into individual sessions?
And I always advise people that the first session is a consultation. Nobody's committing the couples therapy in the first session.
Yeah.
What you're doing is going there and seeing if you think couples can help with your situation and if that therapist is the right person. So it brings the bar down for the party who's not quite as enthusiastic about going to couples. Just go find out, right? Your life may get better, and it's a commitment of only one session.
I'm glad you said that, because if one party is not totally into it, there is no commitment. That person may be so reluctant and feel refreshed. Wow, the guy Roger, he's a nice guy, and I feel like he's hearing both of us. Or it could go the other way. Somebody could still have the block and say, I'm not doing this. This is just not going to work for me. So yeah, I think that's great. Do you have a short consult, even if one part of the couple wants to reach out and just ask some questions?
Yes, I have a 20-minute consult.
Gotcha. Best way to reach you, what's your website?
drlavine.com, doctorlavine.com.
Great talking with you today, Roger, and thanks for all the insight and important stuff, and making it clear that it's not always what we think in terms of a communication issue. There could be other stuff going on there. Don't assume, moving forward when you're thinking about getting some outside help with a therapist or a counselor. Appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.